Have you ever felt like no matter how much time and effort you put into this Arabic thing, you're just not making any progress? Well, I felt exactly the same. Traditional methods were just not working for me, and I felt disillusioned and disheartened. That is, until I discovered a new approach that would change everything. In this video, I'm going to share with you the way in which you can optimize your learning to achieve fluency fast, and it's all to do with comprehensible input. Let's get into it. Assalamu alaikum, ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. It's your brother Ryan from Arabic Workshop. And on this channel, I show you how to become fluent in Arabic using natural, evidence-based methods that fits into your busy life, doesn't break the bank, and most importantly, brings you joy. There is a lot of evidence to show that we need to optimize our input in 4 key ways in order to achieve success. It needs to be comprehensible, compelling, rich, and abundant. So let's start by talking about comprehensible input, because this is one of these terms in recent years that is used a lot and actually misused, commonly misunderstood, and it's really important that we're all on the same page. And the easiest way to describe it is to say that comprehensible input is when we understand messages, when we understand the meaning of what we're listening to and what we're reading. It's language that we already understand when we pick up the book or we press play on our video. But the key thing is that when we do read and listen, we can tolerate a little bit of noise. That is, words and phrases that we just don't quite understand. But the point is that we understand the overall message and the gist of what's being said or what's being written. So when we deliver content on Arabic Workshop, we generally do something known as comprehension-aided supplementation. And the idea there is that as we're speaking and telling a story or describing something, we're using actions and we're using illustrations, anything to make the noise, the unknown, known. For example, if this was day 1 and you hadn't heard the word for to sneeze in Arabic, and I said atastu, you might look at me blank. But if I said atastu, achoo, atastu, that becomes comprehensible aiding supplementation. I'm making the incomprehensible comprehensible. So what I've done there is I've connected the sounds that you've heard, the word atastu, to the action of sneezing. And I've put a direct connection between the word and the meaning in your brain. And that is how comprehensible aiding supplementation helps to make that noise comprehensible. There are many techniques and methods out there that aid in comprehensible input. And the one that we prefer in Arabic Workshop is story listening, but more on that later. As a learner, we need to tolerate a certain amount of noise and not have the temptation to run to the dictionary at every opportunity, especially if we've understood what we've heard or what we've read and we're in the flow. The next point is compelling. Your input needs to compel you to stick around and finish listening or finish reading. The idea here is that the content of what you're reading or listening is driving your motivation. It's the thing that's keeping you in your seat. And it's described often as input that is so interesting, that is so exciting, that you're so engaged in, that you forget that you're doing it in another language. That sort of ties into the next point, which is that comprehensible input needs to be rich. It needs to be rich in language. There needs to be enough language in the content that it's driving the story or that it's driving the description of what you're reading. So what will happen when this is the case is that there will be plenty of language that is comprehensible, that will explain what is incomprehensible, that will explain the noise. This is quite often referred to as I+1, where you as a learner are ready for that small baby next step, and the language just takes you there, and it's rich enough to do so. In order for this to happen, the content of what you're listening to and what you're reading must not be filtered. It must not be written in a way to isolate grammar and vocabulary, because it's up to your language acquisition device in your brain to decide when it's ready to acquire. All of this happens subconsciously. And so if a teacher tries to control that process, they're actually depriving you of stimulation, of all that richness that will help you onto that next step, which is the I+1. Okay, so once we have comprehensible, compelling, and rich input, we need to make sure that it is abundant. And by abundant, we need to do a lot of it. What I recommend here is that you include Arabic into your routine every day, even if it is the tiniest amount, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's far better for you to do that and have plenty of input in your life than to go to a class once a week and really try and motivate yourself to do a lot of work there. The other thing that you have to, as a learner, combat when you're putting abundant input into your life is you've got to try and avoid that constant desire to get to the next level. So we're going to immerse ourselves in so much input that our progress is just going to be natural. We're going to be doing these small I+1 steps every day until we finally notice that in 6 weeks, we've taken a big leap. But that leap was actually made up of all these tiny small steps along the way. So I want to give you a simple strategy to include comprehensible, compelling, rich, and abundant input into your life. I want you to start off by thinking about what it is you want to learn about, what it is you want to read about, what it is you want to find out about that is really exciting and really interesting. For example, in my case, I am a traditional archer and I'm currently trying to become good at mounted horse archery. So the way I'm going to do this, apart from getting coaching from a qualified instructor, I'm also going to read a 13th century manual for cadets written by a retired Mamluk general called Taiboa al-Yunani. This, for me, at this time in my life, is really compelling because I'm trying to learn the techniques that were tried and tested and used in an army that was actually very successful, notably against the Mongols. What I want to know is how I can get faster at drawing an arrow, knocking it, and shooting it, and then repeating that cycle again and again while seated on a horse. And I want to go back to the source and try and understand that from a master who has used these techniques in actual battle in the 13th century. That for me is really interesting, and it feels like I might develop a connection with that tradition. And so that's how I feel I'm going to tick those boxes of it being comprehensible, compelling, rich and abundant input. I'd also like to recommend you to something I call the 98% rule. If we understand that there is noise and comprehensible input, we're all going to have a certain amount of noise that we can tolerate. My tolerance is really low. I need 98% comprehensible input. Otherwise, I tend to lose interest, my mind wanders, or I get really frustrated. You've got to find what your tolerance is. I have heard about some polyglots who can tolerate about 15% noise, but for me, that's way too much. And so the way I do this is that if I am needing to look up more than 2 words in every 100 words, that's a text or a video that I will just put aside and I'll come back to later. It's just that little bit beyond my level. And what I'm interested in any given moment is volume. If you can do this every day, if you can include those 4 features in your input every day for about 2 years, the evidence is that you will become fluent in that time. There does need to be a little bit of ramping up of the volume over time. So 2 minutes every day for 2 years isn't quite going to cut it. I would aim to get from 2 minutes over a period of about 2 months to doing about an hour every day. And if you can push that to more time that's comfortable all the better. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to become a high intermediate to low advanced level learner within 2 years, and by doing that, becoming a competent self-teacher. If you can do that, you are likely to enjoy the journey and experience that joy that I promised you at the beginning of this video. I can honestly say that this has worked for me. The level that I am right now, I don't need to look for dedicated learning resources. I can just engage in modern standard Arabic content that already exists for native speakers. The difficulty really comes when you're beginning, literally day one. How do we make sure that we are learning through comprehensible input? Resources are hard to find, so let me get you started on a suitable playlist of day one story listening just here.